I shot this spec almost entirely on this 7.5mm ultra-wide Lowit lens. In this video, I'll talk about why I love this lens, how it made this video possible, and the few things I did to intentionally impair it. So because this lens has zero distortion, an extremely wide field of view, and a very close minimum focus, I'm able to get shots like this that feel kind of impossible. Now this lens is 7.5mm, which sounds kind of absurd, but it is a Super 35 lens, and I'm pairing it with my Canon C70. So in full frame terms, it's about a 10mm effective focal length. So one thing that you might notice right away in the footage is this hard vignette. Now that is not a feature of this lens. This is the first of two ways that I kind of impaired this lens by adding a mist filter with a step-up ring. And this lens is so wide that a step-up ring is going to be visible in the shot. When I was testing out filters on this lens, I really did like the vignette, and I liked it so much that I was also considering adding a polarizer filter on top of the mist filter for an even more dramatic vignette. But the morning of the first shoot day, I kind of chickened out, and I thought, you know what, let's keep it more subtle. So like I mentioned, this is a 0D lens. No pincushion or barrel distortion. All lines are straight. And this is the second way in which I kind of impaired this lens, this time in post, because there were a few shots that I thought could actually benefit from some barrel distortion. One was a turntable POV looking straight up at the record store owner, and one was a bird's eye view shot going straight down at the racks of records. And that one specifically I thought worked well with barrel distortion because of the camera movement. We had the camera on a C-stand arm kind of rotating around the stacks of records, and I really liked the energy that I got from the records going in and out of the barrel. So you may have noticed that not everything was shot on this lens. The silhouettes and studio stuff were shot on my 24-105 2.8 to get a bit more compression, and we also used a Canon XL1S DV camera, and then we played back that footage through an old TV and recorded the screen of the CRT TV. Next, I want to talk about my favorite types of shots to get with this lens, but first I need to take a quick pause to thank the sponsor of today's video who was integral in this production, and that is FrameSet. FrameSet is my favorite place to find inspiration from music videos and commercials. During pre-production, I created sets for each of my vignettes within the spec ad. The biker, the skateboarder, the group of Gen Z friends, and then I also created sets for style, for specific types of styles like ultra-wide angles or silhouettes. Finding inspiration like this not only inspires me, but also helps me communicate my vision to other people. And I had people working on this for either discounted rates or friends just helping out for free, and sharing these references with them not only helped them understand what I was saying, but got them excited about being involved because they knew that we were trying to capture something cool. I can think of no better shorthand to get an idea or style across in a montage ad than to show someone a world-class example of that thing. So thank you, FrameSet, for making this spec ad possible. From giving me inspiration, to helping me organize my ideas, to communicating those ideas, to making the on-set experience more efficient. If you want to try out FrameSet for yourself, you can check out the link in the description, and you do not even need an account to start searching, so go ahead and check it out. I strongly recommend it. So pretty early on when using this lens, I realized that my favorite shots were the ones where the lens and the camera were pretty much in danger. Like with this shot of the biker, I'm longboarding with the camera hanging just a few inches from the ground. And then with the skateboarding, of course, like this grind shot where I used the take where he bailed because I thought it had the most energy, I'm getting as close as I physically can. And when I wasn't as close as physically possible, I regretted it. Like the blue hour shot that I kick off the piece with. I was probably only like 2 feet at most away from him when he came up behind me to get some air. And I didn't feel comfortable getting closer than that and putting him in any amount of physical danger, any more so than he already was putting himself in. But because he gets more than a few feet away from the lens, he's just much smaller in frame than he would be with any other focal length. So you just have to keep in mind that if you're not able to get a few feet or inches away from the lens, your subject is going to appear very small in frame, and you really have to get close for that motion, but also just for the subject to really be prominent. I initially bought this lens to use on corporate shoots because I find myself pretty often filming small bathrooms. I have a furniture company as a client, and we do a lot of testimonial videos with interior designers and business owners that have their spaces outfitted with this brand's furniture, and I was having a real hard time getting good wide shots of small rooms. For a little while, I was speed boosting a Rokinon 14mm and correcting its significant barrel distortion in post. But even when I did that, I never really liked the colors coming out of that lens, and I figured if I was buying a quality wide angle, I might as well go as wide as I can, and I literally bought the widest lens I could possibly find. But in reality, a 14mm instead of a 10 or 7.5 is a much more useful focal length, and I recently did pick up a used Canon EF 14 because all those Canon EF primes are so cheap nowadays, and I've been using that 14 a ton on my corporate work. And that lens has very nice colors and very controlled distortion and autofocus. But I am still so glad that I do have this Laowa because it's so fun for stuff like this. And occasionally I'll find myself needing to get wider than 14 on corporate shoots, and I do feel nice just being able to rest easy that I do have the widest possible option in my bag if everything else fails. But that happens pretty rarely. Oh yeah, and one other small downside about this lens is that it's so wide that it's not uncommon for wires or your monitor to make their way into frame. And of course, this is a cine lens. It does not have autofocus. If you work with an AC that pulls focus for you, or if you do a lot of motion control stuff, that could be really cool. But I personally, for this shoot, did have to rent the DJI LiDAR focus system from my local rental house because I had some gimbal moves, and I definitely wasn't trusting myself to rack focus with the little DJI motor while operating a gimbal. And of course, lenses this wide will have fairly deep depth of field, but if you're making the most of this lens in the way that we talked about, where you get really close to your subject, you will have to rack. So yeah, an autofocus lens is probably more useful to more people and more definitely easier to use in more situations. If you find yourself shooting solo or with small crews like I was on this production, then an autofocus version of a similar lens is probably a better way to go. And Laowa does make a slew of super high quality ultra wide lenses. This is just one of them. And unfortunately, if you're a Canon shooter like me, autofocus third-party lenses are much harder to find. I think Canon's 10 to 20mm lens is like a few $1,000s and slower. So this is still a good option if you're a C70 shooter, though. Huge shout out to Steven for handling everything DV, to Uni for taking these awesome film BTS photos. Shout out to Rachel for casting, wardrobe, and producing duties. Riley for gaff taping a bridge in my attempt to cut down on light pollution, as well as many other things. Saltzman for coming in hot with a beautiful van full of grip, and our cast, who are all tagged in the Instagram post, which I'll have below. My Instagram will be linked in the description below. I'm also working on a second behind the scenes video about this spec where I talk about lighting and haze and other stuff that I find interesting that's not related to this specific lens. So let me know in the comments if there's anything that you're interested about, and I might have a video on the C50 soon. All right, see you next time.